Hey everybody. Well, as you could probably imagine, the original trajectory of this video has shifted slightly. I was going to make a video about Saturn today, and last night, like late last night, like right before I was about to go to bed, honestly, I saw the news, as I'm sure a lot of you all did, on social media about the tragic passing of Akira Toriyama at age 68, mangaka of the Dragon Ball series. And I thought like, oh, okay, well maybe we'll do like an intro segment for Toriyama. We'll talk about that a little bit, and then we'll do the One Piece thing. But the more I thought about it last night, as I was like going to bed, was I was just like all the memories I had of like Dragon Ball, like growing up and like watching the anime with like my friends, started like flooding back to me, and it was just like one after another. It was like, oh yeah, that moment. Oh yeah, when Goku fought Cell. It was like, oh yeah, okay, when Goku was going up again, when Vegito happened, when Super Saiyan 3 happened, all the memories from like Dragon Ball. So I thought, this is a Dragon Ball day. This is a Dragon Ball day. This is a Dragon Ball video. I'm sure a lot of you all have similar stories and experiences. So let's just talk about it. Let's just talk about our memories with this series that we've grown to love over the years. And a lot of people, if you grew up in the 90s and early 2000s, I mean, this was like a keystone anime. This was like an anime that like got you into the medium. Like for a lot of people, me included, I'm pretty sure it was the first introduction to anime I've ever had. Like, I think I watched Dragon Ball slightly before Yu Yu Hakusho, certainly before Pokemon and Yu-Gi-Oh! Like, Yu-Gi-Oh! Wasn't even out yet in the States. It would have been in, like, like the late 90s. I'm pretty sure Dragon Ball was the first. And so I have some stories I want to talk about with that and just my personal memories. But just, like, comment down below about, like, what's your, like, quintessential Dragon Ball memories. Because, like, I don't just have one. I have several. But, like, as for the man himself... it is not a stretch to say this was the loss of the greatest mangaka of all time. Like, obviously, people have, like, different measurements of how you, like, determine that and everything, but, like, just in terms of his, like, long-lasting influence, like, Oda, Kishimoto, and Kubo all cite Toriyama as their, or one of their main influences on creating their series. Like... without Toriyama, without Dragon Ball specifically, there might be no One Piece. Or One Piece would be very, very different. You understand, like, what Toriyama did was set a standard when it came to, like, shonen battle manga or shonen manga in general, like, his comedy and, like, the way he, like the tournament arc in general, like, the whole trope of tournament arc. Like, even if it existed maybe a little bit before Toriyama, like, the idea of that was codified through Dragon Ball. So, like, anytime you see, for certain, anytime you see a tournament arc in any shonen manga, or not even shonen, but, like, any manga in general, post-Dragon Ball, the mangaka was thinking about Toriyama, was thinking about Dragon Ball when they drew that. Or had to be in there somewhere, because that is what he established, right? So... huge influence on so many mangakas. I actually have an interview back here between Oda and Toriyama that was in one of the color walks, so I wanted to read some of that because Oda actually knew the man and actually got to sit down and talk with him on a few occasions, so that would be pertinent to read that. But I just want to start with like some stories about Dragon Ball. What's your first Dragon Ball memory? Does anybody remember that? Your first Dragon Ball memory? I kind of remember mine. So I had a friend down the street. He was a few years older than me. His name was Ian, and I actually was digging around in pictures upstairs trying to find some stuff. There was a picture. I wish I still had it. I think it's at my mom's place. There was a picture of me and Ian watching Dragon Ball on my parents' old, like, floor model Zenith wooden television. And they're in the picture, in this crappy, like, 90s picture, you can see... Super Boo on the TV. You could see, like, as Super Boo absorbed Gohan and he was fighting Vegito, like, you could see him on the screen and then me and Ian, like, watching the shows. I wish I still had that, but I couldn't find it. But I did find a picture of me and Ian. I did find a picture of me and Ian from this. This was my friend growing up. This was my childhood friend, like one of my first best friends, and we would watch Dragon Ball all the time together. We would go to the bus stop together, and his house was like right next to the bus stop, so we would hang out and we would talk about Dragon Ball. He was like, "Oh my God, did you know Gogeta?" And I remember when Gotenks went Super Saiyan 3, because I would get the VHS tapes, and they would have the episodes before they would air on Toonami. So I would see the episode of like Gotenks going Super Saiyan 3 and busting out of the time chamber. And I remember going down to the bus stop one day and being like, hey, Ian, well, guess what? Gotenks is Super Saiyan 3 now. And he's like, what? And he's like, oh my God. When Goku went Super Saiyan 3 for the first time, this is not the first memory. These are going to be very, very scattershotted because there's so many of them, right? And this is a long time ago. But a memory that's very vivid in my brain is I got the VHS for when Goku went Super Saiyan 3. And then I call Ian up, and he came up to my house, and we watched it in my mom's living room. And when Goku, that whole episode is just Goku screaming. That whole episode is just Goku screaming, and the buildings in the world like shaking as he's going into Super Saiyan 3. And the Faulkner track is ramping up in the background. And then me and Ian are just on the couch, jumping up and down. We couldn't have been more than like, I don't know, 8 years old at the time. And just shouting the entire length of the episode as Goku's screaming. We're screaming too. And then when he finally went Super Saiyan 3 and you just see the full form of it, we just like landed on the couch and we were like, you know, like, so that's a memory certainly. Because when I think of Dragon Ball, I think of hanging out with my friend Ian. He's still around. Nothing happened to him or anything like that. He's still alive. It's just that, you know, I haven't stayed in touch with him in a while. You know what I mean? So, Ian, if you're watching this, hey, man, how you doing? And how's it been? It's been a while. This was taken, by the way, at like 7 a.m. at the bus stop, which is probably why I look like high as shit in this photo. But anyway, my first memory, though, I honestly did not like Dragon Ball at the very beginning. Because my first memory of Dragon Ball is this. I was watching, I don't remember if it was Cartoon Network or Nickelodeon or whatever. It was a station Dragon Ball was on, right? And it was like a Saturday afternoon. And I had the day off of school, obviously. So I'm like, I want to watch like some cartoons, right? I wanted to watch like, you know, if it was Nickelodeon, it would have been like SpongeBob or something. If it was Cartoon Network, it might have been like Courage the Cowardly Dog or something like that. And so I turn on that station, and they were running a Dragon Ball Z marathon that day. Now, I would like to say at this point that like, oh, I watched the Dragon Ball Z marathon and that's what got me into Dragon Ball. No, I was actually really mad because like the cartoons I wanted to watch weren't on. It was this show that I'd never heard of before, this Dragon Ball Z show or whatever. And it was in the middle of Namek, and I think it was one of the filler episodes of Namek. Like, it wasn't even one of the good episodes. I was like, that was probably the first thing I ever saw of Dragon Ball Z was one of the Namek filler episodes. And I just turned off the TV. I was just like, I was mad. I was just mad. It's like, I can't watch my cartoons because that thing is on or whatever. And this is such a weird transition. But the thing that got me into Dragon Ball Z was Dragon Ball, because I think Dragon Ball Z aired first in the States, and then Dragon Ball started to air later. So I would see... Every now and then I would see clips or I would see episodes of Dragon Ball Z because it was around and people would talk about it. But I was just like, I don't know about that. I don't care. And then one day I'm watching TV, probably like Toonami or something, and the first episode of Dragon Ball started. It was either the first or second. It was one of the early, like, beginning of Dragon Ball, right? No, I think it was the first. I think it was the first episode of Dragon Ball is when I actually first properly started, which is very fortunate because not everybody starts an anime on like episode 1, but like, especially back in those days, right? So, you know, I remember that because I remember Goku. I remember the narrator coming on and explaining like, oh, there's this 10-year-old boy named Goku. He lives out in the mountains, and Goku's holding this giant saw and he's rolling this log down the hill and runs into Bulma, and like the adventure begins and everything like that. And I'm such an idiot. I did not connect the dots. I did not connect the dots. It took me I'm a kid. I'm like kind of stupid, to be honest with you, because it took me a while to realize like Dragon Ball is the story of Goku when he was a child. And then Dragon Ball Z is when he's an adult. Like, it took me a while to connect those dots. Because I was like, wow, this show has a character that's really similar looking to that other show. But whatever, probably not related. The name was the same. But, like, anyway, I remember being like, what? Okay, oh, I get it. Okay, this is like when he was a kid growing up. And then the other series is, okay, all right, I get it now. With Dragon Ball, the first big memory I have is actually not the Tenkaichi Budokai. which I think is a lot of people's like first like memory. My favorite part of early Dragon Ball was actually in the Red Ribbon Army saga, and it was when he attacked Muscle Tower, because that also introduced it existed before this, because Toriyama was taking it from a Bruce Lee movie, I think like Enter the Dragon or Way of the Dragon, something like that, where Bruce Lee has to like fight up a tower of people. Like every level there's like another opponent, and he beats the crap out of them. He goes up to the next level, and there's another opponent, he beats the crap out of him. He goes up to the next level. You know, he has to keep ascending the tower, you know. So I never saw any Bruce Lee movies or anything. So this is the first time I was introduced to that trope, that idea, that plot structure of an arc. So Goku's like, you gotta break into Muscle Tower, and you gotta fight through like 5 levels to get to what was it, Commander White at like the very top or something. And I'm just like, oh, that's so cool. Like, so like every level is gonna be a little different, and every level's gonna have like a different opponent. So I remember that. I remember him, he gets on, I think he starts on the second level because he power pulls his way up. And then the second level is just like a bunch of random guards in the Red Ribbon Army, so Goku beats the shit out of them, no problem. And then he goes up to the next level, and then he fights Major Metallitron, who's basically just the Terminator. Because, you know, Dragon Ball came out in the 80s, and there was a lot of like that in those cultural zeitgeist at the time. So Major Metallitron is just this giant, like Arnold-looking dude, and just like, I will terminate you. And fun fact, didn't realize it at the time, but later on I saw like a piece of trivia that when Major Metallitron like scans Goku, it actually does say on his screen like he's an alien or he's like an extraterrestrial or something like that, and it's kind of like a blink and you'll miss it kind of moment. But this was Dragon Ball. This was before we knew that Goku was a Saiyan. He was an alien. So it's weird. I don't know if that was included later or whatever, but that was an interesting piece of trivia. So Goku fights Major Metallitron. I remember he like rips off his head and his arm, and he's still like moving, and he's coming after him. And then his batteries die, which is so Toriyama. Just like, oh man, how's Goku gonna get out of this one? And then the battery just dies. Like, oh, forgot to charge his batteries. It's like, okay, moving up to level 4. Level 4 was what, Murasaki, the ninja dude, and he was really funny. And then the 5th level was that he meets Ader at some point, and they go up together. And then the 5th level is that like jelly monster, which I think is Goku's like first confirmed kill, other than just like fish or like dinosaurs or whatever. Like, yeah, I think that's Goku's first confirmed kill in the story. And then they finally make it to the top, and it's just like, I remember watching those episodes, like, and I think it was like every day there was like an episode that was like continued the story, and it's like, oh my god, that's like a quintessential Dragon Ball memory for me, honestly. I remember there was a period of time, because they didn't show them all in succession. Like, they would show a batch of episodes, and then they would stop, and then there would be a break for a few months, and then they'd continue. I remember there was one break in episodes where they were in that pirate hideout, and they had to fight that pirate robot. Remember the pirate robot? And it's just like, so the pirate robot was actually kind of beast. The pirate robot kind of like, you know, messed up Goku a little bit, if memory serves. And then they were like escaping the pirate hideout, and then they ended the episodes for that. And I had to wait like 3 months, and then I remember it came back, and they're like escaping the pirate hideout. And I'm like, I remember that. Yeah, but those are some really good Dragon Ball memories. Dragon Ball Z, the first memory I have where I think I actually got into the story was I was visiting my uncle in Georgia at the time, and I was in his living room, and I was watching TV, and it was the episode where Vegeta was fighting Semi-Perfect Cell. Vegeta was like, you know, super yoked, and he was fighting against, he was like Ascended Saiyan kind of thing, and he was fighting against Semi-Perfect Cell and just beating the shit out of him. And I think it was that episode that might have gotten me into like Z. I'm like, okay, I will watch Z now. And I remember watching Z was very eclectic. Like, for me, it was like going back to the Namek saga, then the Saiyan saga, like trying to make, like, where do all these pieces fit in exactly? Because, like, I don't even think we had a computer yet. Like, no, we didn't. I don't think we had a computer yet, so I couldn't just look up, like, the episode order of, like, Dragon Ball. It was, like, you just, like, okay, where does Frieza fit in and the Cell guy? Like, where's whatever? But by the time we got to Boo, I think I had it pretty much straight. I had it, like, understood, like, okay, I think I'd seen most of Dragon Ball at this point. And Boo, like I said, came out on like VHS tapes that I would buy in the store, and they would be episodes that had not aired yet. They would come out on VHS first, and then it would show up on Toonami like months later. Okay, so I remember watching that, and then like Super Saiyan 3. So a lot of the memories I have of Dragon Ball Z are Boo saga, because that was when I was watching it weekly, and really, I was probably the most into it at that point. I don't remember what year that would have been. Maybe like 2002, 2003. I'm not exactly sure. But it was around that time. And yeah, Goku finishing off Kid Buu with the Spirit Bomb, that was a big moment. Vegito was a big moment. Yeah, so that's that. And then GT. And then GT happened. I remember on one of the VHS tapes there was a trailer for GT, and I thought it was really cool looking. Like, I thought, like, oh, okay, Dragon Ball Z's done. Now we're going to GT. And I watched GT. I did. And I thought the Shadow Dragon arc was pretty cool. That was pretty much my only memory as a kid. Like, I thought the Shadow Dragon stuff was cool. Actually, I don't think I saw most of the baby arc. So let me know if the baby arc was, like, worth it. I think people honestly say the baby arc is the best part of GT. I've heard some people say that because the first arc is not great. But I think baby, people mentioned that a little bit. And then the Super 17 stuff, I'm not sure. And then the Shadow Dragon was a cool concept. I like the idea of, like, the Dragon Balls themselves kind of becoming, like, the final villain. And then that final episode of GT that's a really good one. Like, that is honestly a solid finale to the series. Like, I really don't have a lot of complaints about that, with, like, Shenron coming down and, like, want to come along, Goku, and Goku's like, yeah, and he's like, they do let travel, and you just see various shots of, like, throughout, like, from Dragon Ball to Dragon Ball Z to GT, just all over the series, and just that's how it ended, and that's how it did end for a very, very long time. And, like, the level of childhood nostalgia when it was announced to come back, when Battle of Gods came out in 2013, which is already, yeah, it was 2013, right? Oh my God, it was 11 years ago already. So it came back, and then Super was announced, and then Resurrection of F, and then, you know, Broly came out, saw that in theaters. Superhero, saw that in theaters. So, like, the fact that it still continues on now is something that really means a lot to me personally. Taken away from personally for a second, let me read some stuff from Oda really quick. Actually, let me show you one thing here. So this is volume 53 of One Piece. And this is something that, I don't know if, maybe a little Easter egg in One Piece. I don't know if anyone's ever noticed this. But if you turn to chapter 519, you can see the border of this chapter is like a different shade. It's usually white. This is like grayed out a little bit. Chapter 519, Natural Born King. Somebody in an SBS, not this SBS, but somebody in an SBS asked Oda, like, why is this one chapter, like, shaded differently? And they actually said, like, is it because Dragon Ball ended at 519 chapters? And Oda's like, yes. So Oda was writing chapter 519 for One Piece during the Amazon Lily arc, and he was like, this is a huge milestone. This is a big milestone. I am now at as many chapters as Toriyama. I am now at as many chapters of a manga as my hero, Toriyama, like the king. You know, so Oda himself was like, I got to do something to bookmark this. I got to do something to commemorate the occasion. And he was like, let's just shade it out as like a marker to like know that like this is like Oda himself saying like I reached this point. You know, like that's insane. That's incredible. So I wanted to point that out because maybe some people didn't notice that or didn't realize that. But I also have this. I have this is One Piece Color Walk, the first one. I think these just got released in English not too long ago because they were not translated for a long time. But in the back here, there's actually an interview that Oda did with Toriyama. And I'm not going to read the whole thing. And it's available online. If you don't have the Color Walk, the actual book, you can find it online. I'll leave a link below. But I just wanted to read this here. Okay. This is like the moderator talking. First of all, Mr. Oda, please explain your feelings about Mr. Akira Toriyama and his works. And this is what Oda's response is to that. He is like a god to me, of course. He is in a different dimension. More than anything else, his drawing skills are too good to be true. And then Toriyama's there. He's like, oh boy, I don't feel too comfortable here. It is like, wow, okay. You put me up on a real big pedestal there. You deserve it, Toriyama. And this is interesting one. I can imagine, I would love to have been a fly on the wall for this interview. Because I'm just picturing Oda just, like, super giddy and really nervous, like, talking to one of his heroes. And this is what Oda leads into. This is, like, the first thing in the interview. It's great. To tell you the truth, I didn't read Arale-chan at all. By the way, pause for a moment. So it's Dr. Slump is, like, the actual name of it. But I believe in Japan, most people, like, especially people that, like, read it back in the 80s when it was first coming out, referred to it as Arale-chan. As, like, that's because Arale is the main character of Dr. Slump. So it's, yeah. So To tell you the truth, I didn't read Arale-chan at all. My first encounter with Toriyama Sensei's manga was the second episode of Dragon Ball, and I fell in love with it at first sight. I thought to myself, it's too good. I like Disney a lot, but I thought it was even better than Disney. Do you remember a character named Ron Fan during the Tenkaichi Budokai? So Ron Fan she was one of the characters that fought against, in like the first round, it was against Nam, I think. And she was like the sexy lady, and her form of martial arts was like, there's actually a sketch of her down here. Like, her form of martial arts was just stripping. I'm going to strip and distract my opponent and then attack them. And such a random character for Oda to first bring up to Toriyama, but I love this. Do you remember this character? And Toriyama's like, oh yeah, I remember that character. Yeah, it's strange to ask if you remember, but it seems like you've forgotten about a bunch of characters. Remember how Ron Fan took off her clothes? Her armpit in that scene was drawn extremely well. I believed you were the first person to draw an armpit that well. During that time, I drew mostly armpits. Back then, I also copied Tao Pai Pai's hands. And then Toriyama's like, Tao Pai Pai? That's mercenary Tao in the English. That's starting to become a more obscure character for me. What do you mean? Tao Pai Pai is a major character in the series. The guy with the braid? Yes, the hitman, the character that launches a column into the air and then travels on top of it. Oh, yes, I did draw that one, yeah. And so Oda just goes on. I'm not going to go through the whole interview. It's a little bit long, but he talks about, like, you know, drawing hands is like particularly difficult, you know, when you're like an artist. I actually did know about that one because a lot of my friends are trying to like be artists, and like they do mention that, like, yeah, drawing articulate hands like really well is really difficult. But yeah, so I love that. I love that Oda's like, okay, I'm sitting down with Toriyama Sensei, the greatest mangaka of like all time, huge inspiration. Like, so did you check out Ron Fan's armpits? They were really cool the way you drew those armpits. Like, all right. But that's nice. But that's cool because that's like kookiness, and that's kind of like Oda's personality. And then Toriyama's laughing and he's having fun with it. So, dude, they were friends. They were colleagues, but they were also good friends. Oh, also, I've never played Dragon Quest or Chrono Trigger. I've had Dragon Quest. I do want to check out. Chrono Trigger is one of those games that every time it's mentioned, it sounds so badass to me, and I've never picked it up. I gotta run it at some point. I do. I have like an emulator thing or something. I gotta play Chrono Trigger because apparently it's really good. Maybe I'll check it out on like Twitch. Maybe I'll play Chrono Trigger for the first time on Twitch and we'll see where it goes. But like everything about that game, the way it's been described to me just sounds really cool. So like not like I was texting some of my friends last night in like a group chat, like, hey, you know, like they like anime, but I'm like, I don't know if anybody's like grown up with Dragon Ball in the same way I did, but like Toriyama passed away and that was like one of the greats. And my friend Rob, who's more in like video games, he's like, oh, he did all the art stuff on the character stuff on Dragon Quest, and that's a big loss there. And I'm like, yeah, Dragon Quest. And also, Blue Dragon, I mean, obviously, okay, he did Dragon Ball, so, like, Dragon Quest, Blue Dragon, like, a lot of things dragon-related properties, I would imagine you would think of Toriyama, right? So, Blue Dragon is a more obscure one. Does anybody remember that? I remember watching that on Toonami in, like, 2007, 2008. I don't think it lasted very long. I don't know how long the actual anime lasted, because sometimes like Adult Swim or Toonami would like pick up series and they'd run it for like a few episodes, and even before the anime ended, they just cut it, because that happened with Mare, I remember. But yeah. So Blue Dragon, Chrono Trigger, Dragon Quest, Dr. Slump. I have read a little bit of Dr. Slump. I remember. Here's a memory. I remember back when Shonen Jump was available in America, like on magazine racks. Like you could go. It wasn't as big as Shonen Jump is in Japan. It was like a slimmed down version. But I remember going to the store at like Walmart and getting like a Shonen Jump every Tuesday, and then or every Saturday. I can't remember when it came out. But anyway, going and sitting in the hair salon. I was getting my hair cut one day, and I remember reading a copy of Shonen Jump that had a chapter of Dr. Slump in it. Like had so with a Raleigh and everything. So I remember sitting there getting my hair cut and reading Dr. Slump and being like, this is really funny. And I remember Arale shows up. She shows up in Dragon Ball when they go to Penguin Village with like Lieutenant Blue. And then also I think she shows up way later in Super, and there's that whole gag series and everything like that. Doesn't Beerus like No, does Beerus erase her? I can't remember. I can't remember that filler episode at one point, but Arale shows up at some point in Dragon Ball Super, and I'm pretty sure that like she's just nonsensically powered up because she's a gag character, so she just like wrecks Vegeta and everybody. And I think Beerus just destroys her or something. But yeah, that was wild. But yeah, I think that's a good video length. We could stop there, but I just wanted to share some memories with Dragon Ball and talk about Toriyama a bit and like his influences and like on One Piece, because that's what I talk about mainly. So comment down below on what your like quintessential Dragon Ball memories are and how you got into the series and what it means to you, and like maybe other stuff that Toriyama has done, like Dragon Quest, for instance. If you played that and were more into that, maybe you were more into Dragon Quest than Dragon Ball or something else. But like, even if he wasn't like directly involved in something, odds are, if it's a shonen manga that came out, I would say post 1990, Toriyama probably had some influence in like the mangakas themselves when they were writing it. I think Kubo directly cited Toriyama, like that's the reason Bleach exists is because of Toriyama. Don't quote me on that, but I believe there was something similar like, yeah, the reason I want to become a mangaka, the reason Bleach is here is because of Toriyama sensei. So yeah, rest in peace, Toriyama. You've definitely left your mark on the world, and you've gone out as one of the greats. Thanks for watching, everybody. Teching, signing out.